But my prediction is this. The SEC will set a record. It will have 13 teams in the tournament and will not have a school cutting down the nets in April.
You always got to push yourself a little further. That's like the marathon runner that's pretty much hit the wall at 20, say 5, and they got to get that mile 0.2 more. And you just go the extra mile for our listeners. And, you have to appreciate that. Welcome to Wait, What? Sportsbiz Chat with DP and McGhee. This is the podcast that takes a sometimes irreverent, often cynical, and on occasion a serious look at the business of sports. I'm your co-host, David Parro.
And I'm Tim McGhee.
Well, partner, it's been a bit, but it is nice to be back with the Super Bowl teams known, the college football playoff championship behind us, and a whole year in front of us. So I'm going to turn it over to you and say what is on your mind.
Well, the statute of limitations has long since passed. I'm wishing you a happy new year and our listeners a happy new year, but it is good to be back. And let's talk football, specifically college football and NFL playoffs and Super Bowl. I loved the college football playoff, but looking at the ratings, I may have been in a bit of a minority in that case.
I was shocked when I saw the final number, right, that it was one of the lowest in however many years, and I thought the matchup was great. So I was surprised too, and I was telling people right up to before the game, and it was going to do boffo numbers.
It did 22 million, but that was down 12% from last year. Michigan, Washington. And it's funny because the media guys and the college playoff guys are saying, well, it was MLK Day, it was Inauguration Day. And then if you listen to the Trump administration, they're saying that the inauguration ratings were down because it was MLK Day and college football playoffs day. Apparently nobody representing Martin Luther King Jr. Day is blaming the others for any lack of support or.
Yeah, there's never a lack of people to point a finger at.
But I know we're going to be not to have a spoiler alert. We're going to go through predictions later, but I do think we have not seen the end of changes to the college football playoffs.
Right.
Despite the fact, listen, the first round, all the home teams won, not particularly close games, but that's okay because when you have 12 teams, there's going to be a bit of a disparity between the 12th team and in that case the 5th team, right? But I thought we had some challenges. Obviously there was that horrific shooting in New Orleans, which postponed the Sugar Bowl. We had the fires in Southern California, which forced them to move the game to Glendale, Arizona. But despite that, again, I thought it was great. And Notre Dame did not give up in the final game. They refused to roll over, but
despite the texting that you and I were doing during the game.
Yeah, I think we were both ready to.
We're like, is this 2014 or whenever that Alabama Notre Dame game was?
Thankfully, I refrained from taking my melatonin and putting on my eye shades. But we were sitting here back in late November, early December, talking about how the Ohio State fans, were probably going to call for Ryan Day's head on a pike unless he ran the table and they won the national championship. And lo and behold, they did. They were so successful that defensive coordinator Jim Knowles announced the other day that he's going to Penn State for approximately a 50% raise off last year's salary. I'm sure he probably would have gotten a raise had he stayed at Ohio State, but that's a significant increase. And that may be the difference. That may be what Penn State needs to get over the hump. Because he was so successful in improving that Ohio State defense over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I thought the entire tournament, if you will, was great. I think one of the most fascinating things is that if we were still on the 14 playoff system, Ohio State and Notre Dame
Don't
likely
make
aren't
it.
in. They don't make it. They
Yeah.
don't make it. And the other thing is that we talked about quite a bit is who's going to be the most pissed off school. And I don't think there was as much of that as we thought, because Alabama was the one that probably is that could have gotten in. And certainly with their pedigree and their history in the college football playoff, you'd think they could make the claim that, come on, we're Alabama. I mean, they have such a massive following and their success has been so well known. But I don't think, I think that was a little more muted than I expected it to be. The other thing is my gosh, we talk about the SEC probably a tad more than the Big Ten in all of this realignment, but obviously the other power force is the Big Ten. And man, they were strong. With Oregon going in as the number one, but I think the best team, certainly playing by the end of the season, the best team won the championship.
Yes. Yeah, I thought Ryan Howard played extremely well throughout the entire playoffs. That defense, as we talked about, just fantastic. But Notre Dame's great. And what I love is Notre Dame being an independent in football kept all the money to themselves. They didn't have to share with the conference. If I'm one of the other conference commissioners or an athletic director at one of the other schools, I'm a little ticked. But hey, they have charted their own course forever. And there have been times when it may have been to their advantage to have been in a conference, right? When they had some down years, and they may have done better financially by sharing in the largesse of the conference sharing revenues, but they have stayed the course, and you have to respect them for that.
Agree. With all the other sports having been playing in the ACC for a while, I've always thought that, that would have been, as an ACC fan, just an unbelievable play for that conference. But you can't even imagine what they would have had to turn over to them. And I think it has played out quite well. You can be annoyed by that they've kind of gone it alone, and given their popularity, they tend to get a certain treatment that others don't. But obviously, they've been able to make a good television product for themselves, negotiating that on their own. And as it turns out, I think it's kind of cool because it makes the topography of college football, I think, interesting still, with so much power going to the SEC and the Big Ten, and to a lesser degree, but still significant, the Big 12, more so certainly than the ACC. I think the Notre Dame independence has been pretty cool, and the fact that they were able to legitimately get to the national championship game, even after an embarrassing loss to Northern Illinois. They legitimately made it to the national championship game, and they weren't as good a team as Ohio State, but they certainly didn't lay down after a brutal start to that game, and that was pretty cool.
No, I think both teams that deserve to make the finals made it, and I think the team that deserved to win won. And that's all we can ask for as fans.
So
I would love to have Pete Bavacqua on the show.
Yeah,
he is unique among, and anybody in that position, Notre Dame, unique among college athletic directors.
I think we just got to put the work in, get that done. So we were a little surprised at the ratings, particularly of the championship game. But man, how about those NFL ratings this weekend? Viewership numbers.
At least on the AFC side.
Right. Well, it's not as though the NFC. By the way, I thought the
NFC was down 21%. That's a big drop.
That's what's bizarre now about the NFL, in that it's not, we had Mark Donovan on, the president of the Kansas City Chiefs, some time ago, and we talked about the small market thing and the things they need to do. I don't think they need to do anything anymore. They clearly have this unbelievable national following that I suppose used to be that of the Dallas Cowboys, say. But how does Philadelphia, maybe it's the time slot, not as good. Philadelphia, Washington, with the Commanders kind of coming on as they have, with a great, unbelievable young quarterback. And Philadelphia, the Philadelphia market, against the two of the smallest market teams in the NFL, in the AFC Championship game, and the Bills and the Chiefs. But the Chiefs are a juggernaut, and they have And honestly, they've built up that hate annoying factor, which actually serves them or serves the NFL well when it comes to watching the games. Because I'm guessing that outside of the hardcore Mahomes fans and longtime Kansas City Chiefs fans, people were ready for the Bills to win that game across the nation.
I think so. Philly, the number 4 media market. But I do that game wasn't particularly close. I think the Commanders had a great run, but it hit a very good went up against a very good Philadelphia team. So that game wasn't particularly close. It was also the earlier time slot. So the AFC game went into prime time, which I think helped it as well. But yeah, love them or hate them, people don't ignore the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, I have some friends who are, very knowledgeable football fans, very smart guys, and they are convinced that the referees have it in the bag for the Chiefs.
Well, this happens a lot in sports. Here's what I'll say. They get some very favorable calls at unbelievable times, including in that game. There were multiple calls. Yeah,
Tom Brady.
Right. I listen. Roger Goodell is not on a headset talking to the ref saying, "Move that ball back on that 4th down spot." It was a first down. It was a horrible, horrible spot. And any way you look at it, in my opinion, it was an awful spot that was bizarre. Why the guy ran and actually continued to move inside, and why they didn't go with the guy from the other side's original spot. Anyway, the interception, incomplete, completion, another very interesting call to me. But I don't think it's like strategized and thought through. And maybe I'm an anti-conspiracy theorist, but I have a hard time going there, but it does get annoying after so long.
You ever look at the clock and see that it's 11:11?
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, oh, that's pretty cool. And then you think to yourself that you always see the clock at 11:11, but in reality, you probably see it one day out of every couple of weeks. But in your mind, you see it a lot more often because you're attuned to it when you see it. When you see a bad call against the Chiefs, you're attuned to it. You don't notice the bad calls that go in the opposition's favor. You don't see the 99.9% of the calls that are ruled correctly.
Right.
Wait.
There has to be there must be a name for this principle, because this is a field of study, I imagine. And you being the student that you are.
I think I just brought some serious juice with the analogy. I don't know the name for it, but I do think you. And when I say you, I don't mean you individually. I mean the royal you. Everybody seems to see it that way. Should we tease our audience? I know we're going to do our predictions. We're going to review last year's prediction, and it's one of mine was not a wait what, it was a WTF prediction. But should we tease our audience now with a prediction on where we think the Super Bowl audience is going to land?
Oh, yeah, we generally do this.
This is where you typically get very bold. You go out on a limb when it goes to that. So just to set the stage, last year was 123.7 million viewers of the Super Bowl, which was a record.
123.7.
3.7. So what do you think? Do you want me to go first? Because I'm going to be wrong, and you can just then.
No. Only thing I'm worried about is over under right now. I'm actually going, after seeing that AFC number and what it could be, and I think the people getting psyched to again now tune in on this Kansas City Chiefs thing with a market like Philadelphia, which has a pretty good following. I'm going to go over, but it's only going to be slightly. I'm going which is kind of interesting with the numbers that big, but I'm going 124.5.
I'm going 125.1.
Okay.
Which is so like you're going to be
right now. Yeah.
Yes, but you're going to be right because I'm horrible at that type of prognostication.
No, I mean, listen, it could be insane and just go well above it and you'll be closer because you're over that. I just think it's going to be somewhat tight to that. So yes, that's a good one to go ahead and tease. All right. So speaking of that, at the very beginning of 2024, as we generally do, we made predictions for what was going to happen in the season. And before we make our predictions for the 2025 year in sports business, we want to review how we did because we like to do that. And I'm going to say, generally speaking, we did pretty damn well. And I'm going to even give you credit, Tim, because you went, I think, a little bolder than I did because you're gutsier than I am. So I'm going to go ahead and start. By the way, I always sneak in an extra prediction. You'll recall this. And I'm going to do that again because you can't do it. I'm going to pick the Naismith Award winners. Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm going to review how I did on that first before I do that. I'm just telling you I'm going to do that. I was right, by the way. Just
yes, you were. I was.
Yeah, I mean that was not that hard to pick 𝘗𝘕𝘕 and Caitlin Clark as the Naismith.
No, and even then, and I was very tempered in my comments. I had a very strong sense. Had I not been in my role on the board of the Naismith Awards, I would have agreed with you.
Yes.
But you were right. 𝘗𝘕𝘕 and Caitlin Clark both repeated as Naismith Award winners. First time in the history of the awards that both men's and women's winners repeated the same year. We've had repeat winners on both the men's and women's side, but that was the first time they both repeated.
And you say you didn't even offer an agreement because you couldn't on your board, but you did give me that secret signal that we have that told me that you agreed with me. But we won't tell anyone what that is.
Stop that. That is not
Sorry,
true.
Eric Oberman. He did not do that. I'm just, I pick up certain signals, Okay, so let's review. So my first prediction was that the NBA was going to cut a new deal where they were going to announce their new deal. And it was going to be ESPN and Turner, the incumbents, keeping it, with NBC and Amazon picking up specific portions of it. I was pretty much right, except for the Turner part, which shocked everybody, I think, that they didn't pick up. But NBC did pick up a new piece. Amazon has its section.
Which you called out. You said there's going to be a streaming component. I believe it's going to be on Amazon Prime. It could be Netflix or Apple, but then you went back and you were very clear that your choice was Amazon Prime. So kudos to you. I think you did a fantastic job.
And the other thing is that even though Barkley said he was going to retire, that show will in some way stay intact and just shift over. So that was kind of a piece of the Turner stuff staying. So I did pretty well on that one. Okay. You want me to tell you what your first prediction was, or do you want to?
No, let me do it. And I honestly have no idea where this one.
You keep saying this is so funny to me.
I think it was an attempt to be bold, and going back and listening to the episode, which I am loath to do, as you know, it made sense in a weird way. So I said that the NBA was going to make a strategic investment in ESPN. And looking back during that time, it was a time when there was a lot of talk. It was before the announcement of Venue, right? The since shelved sports streaming package. But it was at a time where ESPN was reporting a pretty big decrease in the number of cable customers. There was a lot of cord cutting going on, which continues. There was a lot of talk by Jimmy Pitaro and senior leadership at ESPN about a direct consumer product, which is coming out this year now, and also talk about, Disney's performance in general. So my prediction that the NBA would make a strategic investment, while 100% wrong, I don't think it was crazy. I don't think it was crazy.
No, I think it was bold. And, thanks for setting up by starting that bit by saying that you don't know where it came from, but basically then justifying that you thought it was a very logical prediction.
Well, no, I didn't know when I went back and I listened, I didn't know where it came from. And then I went back through and I looked at my notes and things like that. And that's where I came up with my assertion that it wasn't crazy.
You will recall that when you said that, I was like, that's a big one. That's a bold one. Anyway, I absolutely credit you for going going out there on that one. All right.
But I think, but the rest of our predictions went extremely well.
Yeah.
Like,
okay. My next one.
My surprise is on mine, not yours.
My
Okay.
next one was that the NHL will announce some form of midseason tournament.
You were, yes, you were.
And that was a big yes.
With
they're doing it different and unique with the Four Nations face-off.
I don't know. I'm going to give you partial credit on that.
Fair enough, because it's not like the NBAs or the WNBAs or
right. We were
MLS.
talking more about. We were talking more along the lines of the Emirates Cup or the NWSL's in-season tournament. Yep. So you get partial credit. I'm looking forward to the Four Nations tournament.
So am I, and we're hoping to get somebody on from the NHL to speak specifically about that soon, that deals in the international space. So stay tuned for that. Your next one.
My next one was that the Pac-12 would be resurrected in some form or fashion, that the intellectual property was too valuable. I went so far to say that the Mountain West Conference was a logical partner. And I'm going to say, but I didn't say that it would commence play in 2025, but that the conference itself would be resurrected. And I'm going to take 100% on that one.
I give you the W on that one for sure. That was pretty good. And I think, when you said it, I remember going like, man, you are cheering for the Pac-12 here big time. And in a way, I think there's reason to do that. I think you and I mean, the Pac-12, the Pac-10, the Pac-8 before that, that was something that was meaningful to us, and it was a big part of college sports, both on the basketball and football side, and obviously excellence across the board in all other sports as well. So it's nice to see they're going to have a lot of work in front of them to carve out relevance, given just how strength, as we've talked about already on this show, these other conferences have gotten.
Yeah, but all credit to Washington State and Oregon State and their athletic directors and presidents for having the fortitude to not go and join one of the other conferences at that point.
Yeah.
So you had one more, which was another W.
The last one was about Formula One, where, as anyone that listens to this show knows, I've spent a lot of time on over the last few years, and that there would be pressure to do something that had an American feel to it because of the U.S. being still the thing that Formula One wants to continue to develop. My suggestion was it was either going to be another announcement for another race, or more pressure to get what was then the Andretti team approved to become the 11th team on the grid, meaning that the grid eventually will have 2 more cars on it, so 22 cars. And that did happen. And what it took was basically a pushing aside of Michael Andretti, who had just annoyed the shit out of everybody, it seems to me. And it's going to be, it's an exciting thing for the sport. Right now, it's a joint venture between General Motors, the Cadillac brand, and TWG Global, which is headed by Dan Taurus, who is the founder and CEO of Gainbridge Insurance, and someone who's obviously been very, very involved from a sponsorship standpoint in sports. And so I think it's an exciting time for General Motors, and I think for the sport to have that level of a brand as a works program, which means that they'll be developing their own engines somewhere down the road. Starting in 2026, they'll be on the grid. They'll be fielding cars powered by Ferrari engines, but then are in the process of developing their own power plant. So yes, that was a win for me, and that did happen.
I think we both deserve
a
pat on the back for what we did.
Yeah, and you had one regarding golf.
I did. I think the term I used would be state of upheaval. That the sport of golf, as related to the Tour and Live, would still be in a state of upheaval at the end of December 2024. And I was correct.
You absolutely were. And if you look over the past year, we talked about, ever since the Live thing happened, we talked about the split pretty regularly. And we've had some pretty strong opinions on it. And it got to the point where it was just so kind of crazy and so many different stories, and to a point where maybe people just weren't even caring anymore, other than those that were behind the scenes trying to make something work. And it definitely ended the year in a complete, like, what the hell's going on? We'll see where that goes coming up, and predictions for 2025, I suppose. So I think with that, yeah, I think we did pretty damn well. And like I said, I thought you made some bold predictions, and I liked the things that you offered up. And I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say for 2025. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back. This is going to be something that forces you to listen to the episode, because I'm going to be introducing a new little music bit into our podcast edit, and and the trivia question for you is going to be, where does that bit derive from? Okay, I'm going on record and asking you that now.
Okay.
So I'm forcing you to listen. Anyway, we'll be right back.
Doesn't pay to make predictions, but we'll make them anyway. 'Cause it is prediction day.
We're back, and we're going to give our predictions for 2025. I know we're almost a month into the year at the time of this recording, but I don't think at least any of my predictions are predicated on anything that's happened over the last 28 days. So, David, you want to start? We'll make this a tradition. You want to give your predictions for the Naismith winners?
I do. So I'm going to go right through them. But I'd love, well, I don't know even know if you can offer any feedback. Anyway, men's player of the year, freshman sensation, Cooper Flagg from Duke. With
by the way, my cousin is very good friends. I have an older cousin up in Maine who is very good friends with Cooper Flagg's grandmother. And Cooper Flagg, before he went to prep school, went to Nokomis Regional High School in Newport, Maine, where my 5 Maine cousins all went to high school. So anyway.
Interesting. So when I decided to go with Cooper Flagg, my original thought was they're not going to give it to a freshman. Then I look back and I'm like, no, they've actually given to freshmen quite a bit, when the freshmen like KD are the best players in the country. So
Zion, KD,
Zion, yeah, another Duke player,
Anthony Davis.
So listen, I think John I. Broome is another logical selection. He came back from injury and actually had a great game. Which, maybe that does propel him into more serious consideration, but we will see. Women's player of the year, which I think could be a hotly contested. I'm going with Notre Dame's Hannah Hidalgo.
Okay.
And men's coach of the year.
I'm going
deep. I'm going all in this year. Yeah, I'm going the whole thing. I don't have to. Okay. Maybe we'll edit this. Maybe we'll say whatever and cut it out in the future. But I'm going to go Bruce Pearl. It's hard to argue with how good they've been, other than he may have a bad rap with the thing because he's had an interesting past and he's not liked by everybody. And on the women's side, which I think it could go to Dawn Staley for a three-peat, right? At least 3 in a row, even though she's won it before than that. But I think it's 3. It would be 3 in a row if she won it. I could be wrong on that.
I believe it's 4.
Anyway, I'm going with Corey Close from UCLA.
Number 1 team. They've been for most of the season.
Right. And I think people are seeing that and saying, okay, Dawn's won it quite a few times now, and some other people are putting up a really good year. But you could argue that it's one of Staley's best years, right?
Every year.
You can never argue that she's just going to be great and the teams are going to be competitive. So that's my predictions for the.
I think those are great predictions. That's all I'm going to say on that topic.
Okay.
But Dawn Staley recently signed a record contract for women's coaches. So that's another great proof point about that. So my first prediction is the one where I'm going to go out on a limb like I did last year.
Nice.
My prediction is that there will be some sort of betting scandal this year that involves a major North American sports league. It will likely involve a player, but it could potentially involve an official. I think that's my bold prediction for this year.
Yeah, this topic has been one that we've addressed on this show a fair amount. You've been very consistent with saying that we understand that it's here, that it's a part of everything. Maybe a little too heavy a presence across all sports. That is sports betting, legalized sports betting. You've also said that you worry about this aspect, and you're putting it down now. I think I wouldn't be surprised either if we see something major.
I hope this is one time where I hope I am wrong. And just just for the record, Dawn Staley last year was her third in a row, fourth overall.
Okay.
So what's your next one?
So my next one is about Netflix and that they are going to continue to do big, bold things. We know that they had the Christmas NFL games. Of course, they had the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson fight. They've got the Women's World Cup, which I thought was a huge get. And I think we're going to see them get bid on NFL international games and probably get, because I think the NFL knows they have a good player. I think we're going to see even more WWE at Netflix. And I'm saying that when the next UFC deal is up, that they will put in a strong bid and be part of that, as UFC, I think, is in good position now, particularly with the current administration in place to do some big, bold things. And Netflix just, I've said it before, I think their long game has been amazing, and they're now everywhere they want to be. Not to steal credit card line.
My next one, not quite as bold, but almost. We are in the heat of the college basketball season. Conference tournaments are just over a month away. The SEC, I think, is the cream of the crop when it comes to conferences this year. You mentioned Bruce Pearl and what he's doing down at Auburn. Great game last night. Kentucky, I think, is 7th or 8th, beat Tennessee, number 4 in the country, in a great game. I love what they're doing down in Lexington this year. But my prediction is this: the SEC will set a record. It will have 13 teams in the tournament, and will not have a school cutting down the nets in April.
You always got to push yourself a little further. That's like the marathon runner that's pretty much hit the wall at 20, say 5, and they got to get that 1.2 more. And you just go the extra mile for our listeners, and you have to appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I don't know if he listens, but my good friend Deborah Edwards at CBS Sports, who is a Kentucky grad, probably would not be happy with the second half of that prediction.
Right. Listen, I think with what Vanderbilt's doing this year, which is just kind of exciting to see,
Kentucky,
it's unbelievable.
I wanted to bring them up. They were fined for storming the court $500,000. Because of what they did in football. They've been fined a total of $850,000 this academic year, right? It's a good thing because they just don't expect to win.
It's a good thing they're going to get
the big, comes down to.
It's a good thing they're going to get the big cut, like all the other schools for the SEC success in college football and the payouts there, and then getting 13 teams in the NCAA. They'll get a nice payout for that as well. So maybe they can afford it.
Yeah, it's sort of like the first time I asked my wife out for a date. I was so shocked she said yes. I ran around the apartment like a lunatic.
Well, think about
Vanderbilt's student body.
Well, think about what Vanderbilt has done in their 2 main revenue sports, football and men's basketball, and how they've played with the conference they're in, and how they've thought through NIL and so forth. They're clearly changing the game a little for themselves, where they were generally the cellar dweller of the conference, and they're being able to be competitive. So I think they're like they're like the Netflix of college sports right now. They played kind of a smart game, and so credit to them. And Vandy fans, students, keep doing it, man. It's great. I think it's great. Yeah, they have to cut back the fines maybe, but all right.
And just the last point on that, this is not a knock on any of the other member institutions of the SEC, but Vanderbilt University is a very rigorous academic institution. Yeah. And so not unlike maybe some of the Ivy League schools in hockey and lacrosse, who are still able to recruit some of the best athletes, in their respective sports, perhaps Vanderbilt will have more success because it will get great athletes who also want that rigorous academic. And by the way, I don't know if you saw, but like you're talking about Cooper Flag, the Duke basketball team had a ridiculous GPA, like a 3.9 GPA, and I think Cooper Flagg and another freshman got 4.0s. I got a 4.0 at Cornell. When you added my first semester grades and my second semester grades.
Oh, don't make me say anything good about Duke, would you? No, kidding. Have lots of Duke friends. All right, my last one is that we will get an announcement on NBA expansion. And it'll be Vegas and Seattle will get the teams. Obviously, Seattle, when the Supersonics moved to Oklahoma City, that left a lot of people bummed. Seattle's a legitimate enough city to host an NBA team, and they support their sports from soccer through football and baseball. So, and then Vegas is an interesting one because they already do play the rookie league there, and it's a great special events market. But what the NHL has done in that market, where we think, and the NFL, of course, it's going to be the other market. So that's my prediction. Listen, the NBA, a lot of people are down on the NBA right now because of some viewership issues, but their valuations are as strong as ever. I think from an investment standpoint, the NBA is a great place. They're flush with this new money, and it's a good time to make that announcement. And they'll get their valuations on their entry price so high. So they're being smart, and this is the time to do it.
I heard this secondhand, so I can't confirm it to be fact, but my understanding is that NBC, as they start to promote them getting the NBA back for next season, are only using young players in their advertising and marketing and promotions. They want to age down the audience a little bit. I think the fact that they're even out there now promoting the return of the NBA to NBC shows that they are all in on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, if we go back and listen to our conversation with Mark Lazarus almost 2 years ago now, I think he was, he was talking about the importance of a property like NBA to NBC. And so I think that ratings may be down slightly this year. I do think that's a bit of an anomaly. And I do think that, to your point, the value of the value of the franchises continues to go up. We were talking about yesterday that Jeffrey Lurie, owner of the Eagles, maybe the lead investor buying the Boston Celtics. Wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be. This is not a prediction. It's an observation, or maybe it's a prediction. I wouldn't be surprised if that franchise doesn't go for $10 billion. And the only reason it might not go for that quite that high is because they don't own their building. Because think about it, the Lakers and the Knicks are not going to be up for sale in any time in the foreseeable future. And arguably those three clubs are the most valuable in the NBA. And what did Sarver pay for Phoenix? But he paid $7, I think. But he also got the Mercury and the building. Somewhere around $7, I think. I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what their revenue stream is off that building, though. I'm assuming they handle all the marketing and the yeah. Anyway, all right.
So I've got one more.
All right.
My prediction is the college football playoffs will expand to either 14 or 16 teams. 14 teams probably makes the most sense because then the top 6 teams would get a bye, and then the last. Well, I don't know about that. I haven't worked out the math, but it's my prediction is it will go from 12 to either 14 or 16. It won't commence play with next year's playoffs, but there will be an announcement that they will expand the college football playoffs for the playoffs that start at the end of 2020. So 2027.
Okay, so in 2026, the championship, it'll still be the 12 teams.
Yes.
But that this year, in 2025, an announcement will come that in the following season, the 26-27 season,
yes,
will be an expanded field. Great. Okay, good. I appreciate the specificity.
Yes, and my corollary to that prediction is that Alabama and Florida State will already start making their excuses for why they should be in the field and not out of it.
Right. Well, I'm guessing Alabama is going to definitively be in it next year. I should have made that prediction. They're not going to be left out. They will do anything to be in it. You want to take us out?
Yeah. So this has been a fun episode. I'm glad to be back behind the mic and looking at you across the computer screen, and want to thank all of our listeners. We plan on being a little bit more consistent in our recording this year. That remains to be seen whether we can do that, but we hope to be. So thank you for your support. If you like us, comment, subscribe, share. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, anywhere you find your podcast. Until next week, he's DP, I'm McGee, and we'll talk soon.